The first thing people noticed about the house was the silence that hung around it even in full daylight, a quiet so heavy it felt like a warning, like a place that dared you to step inside and see what it would cost you. I remember standing at the gate with the sun high above, my hands shaking not from fear but from exhaustion, hearing her voice from earlier echo in my mind, telling me I wouldn't last a week living with her. I had smiled then, not because I was confident, but because leaving had already taken too much from me, and I replied in my heart that I was not leaving unless I was fired. That was the moment my life quietly chose a different direction. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of not giving up on people, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel Bright Acts. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. My name is Armin Halim, and at the time I walked through that gate, I had already failed at more things than I could count. I had failed at school, failed at holding a steady job, failed at being the son my parents needed after my father's illness drained every saving we had. When he passed, the house felt too big, too empty, and my mother moved in with relatives while I took whatever work I could find. That was how I ended up answering an ad for a live-in caretaker for a woman named Said.I, someone people in the neighborhood whispered about as difficult, sharp-tongued, and impossible to please. The pay was modest, the rules were strict, and the warning from the agency was clear that no one had lasted long. Still, the work came with a room, 3 meals a day, and the one thing I needed more than money, a reason to stay. Said.I was younger than I expected, somewhere in her early 40s, with dark hair pulled into a severe knot and eyes that carried both intelligence and exhaustion. An accident years ago had left her with limited mobility, and while she could move around the house during the day, pain shaped every step. She had once been an architect, known for designing spaces filled with light, and now she lived in a house that felt like it was holding its breath. On my first day, she laid out the rules without raising her voice, explaining the schedule, the meals, the cleaning, and the boundaries, all while the sunlight streamed through tall windows and dust floated like tiny stars. There was no warmth in her expression, only a challenge, as if she expected me to fail before the week was over. Living with Said.I was not hard in the obvious ways. The house was clean, the routine clear, and the work honest. What made it difficult was the emotional distance, the way she spoke as if every sentence was a wall, the way she corrected small mistakes with a precision that felt less about control and more about fear. Each morning was filled with daylight tasks, preparing breakfast while the sun warmed the kitchen tiles, opening curtains, helping her with exercises recommended by doctors she no longer trusted, and managing appointments she rarely attended. The afternoons stretched long and quiet, broken only by the sound of birds outside and the ticking of a clock that seemed louder than it should have been. By the third day, my body ached from sleeping on a thin mattress, and my pride hurt from constant reminders of how replaceable I was. I made mistakes, small ones, like burning toast or misplacing a folder, and each time I felt the weight of her disappointment settle heavier in the room. There were moments I stood in the hallway with sunlight spilling across the floor, wondering if leaving would be easier, wondering if everyone else had been right. But every time I thought of walking away, I remembered my mother's tired smile, the empty house we had left behind, and the promise I had made to myself to stay somewhere long enough to matter. The turning point came on a bright afternoon when the power went out without warning. The house fell into a sudden stillness, and Said.I's routine shattered in an instant. Without elevators, without the devices that eased her pain, she became vulnerable in a way I had not seen before. The sunlight pouring through the windows felt harsher, revealing the tension in her posture and the tightness around her eyes. I moved instinctively, opening windows, bringing water, helping her settle into a chair near the light where she could breathe more easily. For the first time, she did not correct me. She watched silently as I worked, her expression unreadable but softer, like a door cracked open. That afternoon, as the daylight slowly shifted, something fragile changed between us. Not trust, not yet, but a shared understanding that we were both surviving something. Over the next few days, she began to speak more, not about her past at first, but about the house, the way it used to feel alive when she was designing and building, the way daylight had once been her favorite tool. I listened while folding laundry or preparing meals, letting her words fill the spaces that had been empty. I spoke less about myself, but she noticed things anyway, the way I handled old photographs with care, the way I paused when my phone buzzed with messages I could not bring myself to answer. As the week went on, the house seemed to respond to our efforts. Sunlight felt warmer, rooms felt less closed in, and even the air carried a lighter tone. I started adding small touches to the daily routine, placing flowers on the table, adjusting furniture to catch more light, cooking meals that reminded me of home. Serafina noticed everything. She did not thank me, but she stopped warning me about leaving. Instead, she watched, observed, and slowly allowed herself to rely on me, asking for help before the pain became unbearable, trusting me with decisions she once guarded fiercely. On the 6th day, something unexpected happened. While helping her organize old design files, I found sketches filled with life and movement, buildings shaped by sunlight and hope. She caught me looking, and for a moment, the walls were back up, her expression hard. But then, in the quiet of the afternoon, she let me keep looking. She explained, without bitterness, how the accident had not only taken her mobility but her confidence, how people had left one by one, unable to live with her anger and grief. She admitted that pushing people away felt safer than waiting to be abandoned. The daylight in that room felt sacred, like it was listening too. By the end of the week, the question of whether I would last no longer hung between us. It was replaced by something more uncertain and more powerful, the possibility of rebuilding. On the 7th day, she asked me to help her step outside into the garden for the first time in months. The sun was bright, the air warm, and the world felt wide. Each step was slow, deliberate, and painful, but she did not stop. When she reached the bench beneath a tree, she closed her eyes and let the daylight wash over her face. I stood nearby, ready to catch her if she fell, realizing that staying had never been about proving strength but about offering presence. Weeks turned into months, and the house transformed in ways neither of us expected. Serafina began consulting again, slowly, from home, her designs returning to life through conversations and sketches spread across sunlit tables. I found stability in the routine, saving money, calling my mother more often, feeling like my existence mattered. We did not become a perfect pair, and there were still difficult days filled with pain and frustration, but there was also laughter, shared meals, and a sense of forward motion that daylight seemed to encourage. One afternoon, as we reviewed a new project together, she looked at me with a calm I had never seen before. She acknowledged that she had been wrong about me leaving, that sometimes people stay not because they are trapped but because they choose to care. That moment stayed with me, not as a victory, but as a reminder that patience can reshape lives in ways force never could. I realized then that my refusal to leave had given her space to heal, just as her challenges had given me purpose. As this story comes close to its end, if it has touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone who stayed when it would have been easier to go, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Bright Acts. Your engagement helps spread stories of hope, resilience, and quiet courage. And before the final moments fade, we have one special request for you. Please comment below and tell us, have you ever stayed when everyone expected you to leave, or has someone stayed for you when you needed it most? Your words might be the light someone else needs today. The house no longer feels silent now. In the daylight, it hums with life, with plans being drawn and meals being shared, with two people who once believed they were unlivable learning that sometimes, staying is the bravest thing you can do.